What's up, everyone? This is Mitchell Mander here, coming at you with another Pokemon 2019 review. Today I will be covering episode 16, which involves Ash catching Gengar, and it was a great episode in my opinion. I think it was handled very well, and I was very impressed with the episode. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Since Ash caught Dragonite and Gengar, with the exception of maybe legendary Pokemon, I think Ash has the potential of catching any Pokemon in this series. So I want you in the comment section down below, all you guys out there, to let me know what you think Ash's next capture will be. I know a lot of people are saying it's probably going to be Riolu next, or possibly Grookey or Sobble. So I guess we will find out when that happens, but let me know in the comment section down below what you think Ash's next Pokemon will be. Anyways, on to the review. The episode starts with Renji getting a little bit of a surprise attack by our good old boy Gengar here, which alerts Ash and Go, and it actually, next thing we see is an interesting title screen for this episode. She is cursed. It's actually really neat. I like it. Anywho, they find out what happened, and they find out from Renji that Gengar is back, and he's messing with them again. And then they hear a noise, and I believe they go in the next room, and they run into the female assistant, which I cannot remember her name off the top of my head right now, and Mr. Mime. And Mr. Mime tries to describe what happened. She actually knows what Mr. Mime is talking about, and Go and Ash are like, what does he mean? And that's when Gengar strikes. And unfortunately, as Ash battles it, it seems like Ash actually ends up getting cursed. Though we'll talk about that in a second. So Professor Sakuragi hears all the commotion. He comes down and basically explains to everyone that, when he bought this place, he actually knew that Gengar was probably here. Like, he heard that this place was haunted for a little while. So, Professor Sakuragi, why on earth did you buy this place if you knew it was haunted? I guess I know he said it was interesting, but I think you'd get a little bit annoyed after a while. And that's why his research sensors, or especially Renji, he's like, why on earth would you buy this place, dude? Anywho, that's when Go actually makes a joke saying that, oh, Ash, you must be cursed. Maybe Gengar got you. And well, shenanigans happen as it appears that Ash actually might be cursed. As he drinks water out of the water vase, and a bunch of shenanigans happen to Ash, including a scene where he falls down the stairs and accidentally grabs Go's butt. Oh, the Ash and Go shippers are going wild today. Anywho, Ash is, he shrugs it off. He's like, oh no, it's nothing. But then he realizes, like, nope, it's nothing. Let's just get physical. And he starts running around, and it actually manages to work. But I think it's mainly due to the fact that Gengar got away from the Sakuragi labs. As Ash is running, he ends up running into town, and by pure plot convenience, he actually runs into Gengar's original trainer. And we find out from this guy, he's a little bit of a prick. He actually abandoned Gengar about 3 years ago. So time does exist in the anime. Anywho, he actually abandons Gengar at the place that would eventually become the Sakuragi Laboratories. And Gengar waits literally 3 years, and I like how it's portrayed here, as Gengar just sits there and waits, and seasons pass. And his trainer never comes back. And his trainer, he's a bit of a prick, because even though Gengar doesn't really show too much emotions, he's just smiling, just being goofy, just sitting there waiting with his goofy face. You could tell that it did affect Gengar. He eventually, became distrustful of humans as a result of this, and whenever anyone would come into the area that would become the Sakuragi Labs, he would just mess with people. And because of this guy, he really messed up Gengar. This guy, he's just as bad as Damien. Maybe not quite as bad as Damien, but this guy is pretty bad. And Gengar, overhearing this, is pretty upset. And he literally tries to nuke this guy off the map. He literally tries to just destroy this guy. And Ash intervenes and stops him. Even Ash calls him cruel. He's like, that's your Pokemon. Come on, dude. What are you doing? Don't be like that. But the guy is a bit of a coward, and he runs off. And Gengar runs away. Meanwhile, Team Rocket actually witnessed what was going on, and they want Gengar for themselves. Oh, and Go and Score Bunny eventually catch up to Ash, and they witness everything too. Just want to throw that in there. Anywho, Team Rocket go after Gengar, who's still pretty upset about what happened. And James is in his Ghostbusters Luigi's Mansion phase, and they tell the Gengar to come with them, and he'll be strong with them. But Meowth tells Jesse and James that, oh well, he's distrustful towards humans, so they pretty much force Gengar to go with them. And in Ghostbusters / Luigi's Mansion fashion, James sucks Gengar up into the Poltergeist 3000 or 5000, whatever Luigi's Mansion game you're playing. Anywho, yeah, it actually ticks Gengar off even more. And just as they're about ready to get away, it seems like Ash has actually spotted them doing this and has Pikachu use Iron Tail to free Gengar out of the Poltergeist trapped. Ash manages to get through to Gengar, and Gengar actually trusts Ash. Meanwhile, Team Rocket get their gotcha machine, and they actually, this is pretty interesting, probably one of the more interesting gotchas that they got. They actually got two dust tops, excuse me. Interesting enough, I believe one knows Fire Punch and the other one knows Ice Punch, which I thought was really neat. Anywho, Ash has a double battle with Team Rocket with Pikachu and Gengar versus the dual dust tops. And it seems like they're struggling a little bit. Although Gengar seems to attack Pikachu after Pikachu gets frozen by an Ice Punch, but he's actually helping Pikachu. And Gengar actually manages to overpower the two dust ops and actually manages to defeat them, and manages to blast Team Rocket off. However, it seems like Ash has actually gotten sick, maybe from being cursed for so long, and passes out. We then cut back to the Sakuragi Labs, in which Ash is back, waking up from his fever, in which Go, Scorbunny, and probably Gengar brought him back home. He wakes up, he's wondering where Gengar's at, and that's when Gengar drops a Pokeball and an apple for Ash. An apple so that he can, get over his sickness, his fever. And a Pokeball because Gengar wants to be Ash's Pokemon. Which is pretty awesome because Gengar is Ash's first ghost type. And Go even acknowledges it that Gengar wants to go with Ash, which I think is actually it's a small detail there that Go realizes that, hey, I think Gengar wants to go with you. It shows, some growth for Go as he's developing in this series, since Ash is the one that's always been like, oh, hey, Scorbunny wants to go with you, Go. Cubone wants to go with you, Go. So here's, on the other hand, Go actually saying, hey, Gengar wants to go with you, Ash. And that's when Ash catches Gengar. And Gengar, being the goofy guy he is, drops a bunch of apples on Ash, encouraging him to eat them so he can get better, with Gengar enjoying an apple himself, which has to be a Death Note reference, I swear. Which, if so, that's pretty awesome. In fact, I think it is. I'm just gonna say it is, because, yeah, that was pretty neat. That was a pretty neat reference there. Anyways, the episode comes to an end. So overall, actually a pretty great episode. I want to start off by saying that the comedy in this episode was spot on. I think it was very well done. Every time they did like a comedic gag in this episode, it just hit, and it was funny. It just worked so well in this episode, with Ash and his goofiness in this episode, Gengar and his goofiness, and then of course Mr. Renji here as a little crybaby here, a little scaredy cat. So gotta say, I appreciate the comedy in this episode. But of course, the best moment in this episode for sure is definitely Ash catching Gengar and Gengar's backstory in this episode. I thought it was actually really neat how it was done. I know he didn't really appear before episode 11, but I think it was well done enough here. And I know it's another tragic backstory too, but I think this time around it actually manages to stand up on its own and separate itself from previous ones like Charmander and Chimchar, for example. It's kind of the same thing where it's abandoned by its trainer, but you get to see kind of how long Gengar was there. He was abandoned 3 years ago, and he just sat there and waited. And you could see the seasons passing. And Gengar's, he doesn't really show emotions, but he's just waiting and waiting and waiting to the point where he finally became distrustful of humans and would, mess with them whenever they'd come into his area. So I think that was pretty well done. I actually really appreciated it. And another thing, somebody noticed this on Twitter, is when Ash actually captured Gengar, he was wearing a Charmander shirt, so a nice reference back to when Ash caught Charmander, and then him catching Gengar in this episode. And now, there was a few things that I disliked in this episode, not a whole lot. Overall, this episode was great, but if I'm being completely honest here, It was a little bit too plot convenient that Ash runs into town and just happens to run into Gengar's old trainer from 3 years ago. And then he basically blurts out what he did and how he's not cursed anymore. It felt just maybe a little bit too plot convenient. And yeah, it was paced a little bit weird because this guy really wasn't on screen long enough to make as much of an impact as someone like Damien. I mean, sure, yeah, from what he was saying, yeah, we just know this guy's a jerk and he abandoned his Pokemon. But I feel like maybe he should have been on screen maybe a little bit more and had a little bit more impact. I mean, from what we got, it's fine, so I accept that, but just maybe a little bit more. Additionally, and this is a nitpick of mine because apparently I'm a Koharu stan, but this is the 5th episode that Koharu has not appeared in a row. But luckily, she'll be appearing in next week's episode. I do feel like she should have been involved, maybe even for like a little bit, even like just a minute of screen time, just to show that she still exists. But she's apparently appearing in next week's episode, so I guess I can ignore that because our queen is back in next week's episode. But all jokes aside, I have to say I was impressed with this episode. It was really well done for the most part. I'm actually pretty happy that Ash got this capture, and like the doors are open. Ash could catch any Pokemon, maybe not legendaries, but he's open to catching any Pokemon now. I mean, come on, let's just give him a champ. Just do it. Anywho, that's all I got for this review. So guys, did you like this episode? Did you hate it? What are your thoughts? Remember to name who you think Ash's next Pokemon will be in the comment section down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.